as a person, as an individual. There's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. It's just how God is moving as you hear the words. And I think as we offer our reflections, maybe something will come out of it. So it's a series of successive readings of the same text. So you have the text with you in your bulletin if you need to follow along. I often do because I forget the exact words that I've heard. I'm going to read it once, and I'd like you just to sit with the text and then offer a word or a phrase that jumps out at you, and that's it. That's all. That will be the first reading. And then the second time we read it, I'll invite you to offer more of what maybe that word or phrase is bringing up, what this scripture is bringing up to us in our time, in this place, in this context. What do we hear it saying to us in this particular time where we're facing an election in a few weeks, where where life keeps lifing, as my wife sometimes says. So I invite you, and there are no wrong answers, there are no right answers. We won't engage in debate or whether someone's answer is right or wrong. We'll just offer, how's God speaking to you? And we'll gather all of these reflections together, and we'll just see what comes out of it. So beginning towards a little past the halfway mark of the reading. When the 10 heard this, they began to be angry with James and John. So Jesus called them and said to them, "You know that among the Gentiles, those whom they recognize as their rulers lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. But it is not so among you. But whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many." So I invite you to take a moment, and as you feel moved, to offer a word or phrase that comes out to you, jumps out to you.
First heard this, it struck me that the apostle still didn't quite get it. Because the first thing is became angry, began to be angry with James. They're still struggling with position. Who's first, who's second? And even after he said it must be servants to all, I'm not so sure they got it.
Yeah.
It was a very difficult learning process for them, I'm sure.
Sure.
That's the phrase that speaks out to me the most. Whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. I think that's a lesson for us.
Yeah.
I have found that in my life, if you do things that you think initially might be a task, and if you do them without bias, wholeheartedly, you actually feel joy.
Mm.
Doing the right thing ends up to be a joyful experience.
Yeah, thank you.
I think I thought the first thing I was thinking of bringing it closer to me or individually was self-centeredness.
Mm.
Thinking of myself, and I guess the phrase came to me, get out of my own way,
Mm.
do something, yeah, that's what I was thinking. Get rid of my ego, get rid of those types of things, so that you can be open.
Yeah, thank you.
They were not used to a leader who was not a tyrant. It says they recognize their leaders, their rulers, that lord over them.
Mm.
And they were not used to a leader that did not display that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you.
I got from this I'm sorry, I lose words.
No worries.
The stream that has gone through Christianity, that God and Jesus are
Mm.
over all of us, and yet Jesus was sacrificing, or being sacrificed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank
For
you.
those of us who are, he's put himself with us.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
You know, it's interesting that at a certain point in your life, especially as we age, the most valuable thing is time, above
Yeah.
all else. And if you spend your time caring for other people, doing things for other people, or other, even animals or pets, or any way you spend your time that is not to serve yourself, you are sacrificing.
Mm.
You're sacrificing the most precious thing you have at this point in your life.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that word sacrifice holds a lot of meaning,
Mm.
especially for me.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I do think along that line that we get some joy out of, doing for others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I agree.
I don't look at it as a sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
But it is, even though you end up having, affiliates.
Semantics.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. I'll read it one more time, and then if you want to say more, either about what you've offered already, or if you have a thought of what maybe this is speaking to us as a community at Grace at this time, feel free to offer that or whatever else comes up as you hear the words a second time. When the 10 heard this, they began to be angry with James and John. So Jesus called them and said to them, "You know that among the Gentiles, those whom they recognize as their rulers lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. But it is not so among you. But whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many.
I think one of the things it tells us there too, or tells me, is that the ability to change.
Mm.
The way we look at things and the way we see things, and then being more aware of the people around us and the world around us.
Mm.
Again, rather than to be so self-centered, when we're just thinking of ourselves and our immediate families, and that we're reaching out.
Mhm.
We're reaching out, maybe beyond our comfort zones.
Mm. Mhm.
I came here this morning with a lot on my heart, and actually thank you for your reflections, because they've spoken to me and kind of helped me take a deep breath.
Good. Yeah, thank you.
He tells them specifically that whoever wishes to become great must be your servant. He spelled it out
Mm.
loud and clear,
Yeah,
what they had to do.
yeah.
This is a good portion, with an election coming up. Somebody who's going to be serving
Mm.
and how they look.
Must be a slave for
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
Mm. I wonder if we'll find that in either of them.
Yeah. Takes
More in
time.
one than the other.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what you may think of the suicide bombers in the Middle East and the terrorists who put on a vest with bombs on them. Do you think they actually are sacrificing themselves for the good of their cause? Do you think that they reconcile that, or do you think that they're being coerced? Surely this passage does not speak to that type of suicide.
Mm.
That's my opinion. I'm just wondering
And that war has been going on
forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Read through the Old Testament, and my goodness,
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know that there's ever a resolution for them.
Yeah. I'm sure they believe what they believe.
Right.
I think it's probably a product of coercion and a poor interpretation of their religious text. Because the Quran is, there is as much violence in the First Testament of our Bible as there is in the Quran. And, I think any religious group that relies on violence is misreading their text. Ultimately, I'm not an expert in Islam, but from a couple of world religion courses I took, I think each religious tradition, this kind of the central tenet is it's peaceful, and finding a peaceful way to coexist with other people. The history of all religions is full of war and violence. That we have the Crusades, among other violent acts in our own history. But the central message of Jesus, like the central message of the Quran, is one of peace, and peace among our siblings. So, I think it's both of what you described. It's both that they probably believe what they believe, but I think that belief is likely a product of coercion. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Could I I share a very short, real life?
Yeah.
My brother, who was less than a year younger than me, went down in a shipwreck, wound up surviving, and he and this one other person were the only ones that survived. And he converted to the Islamic faith out there in the middle of the ocean somewhere.
Mhm.
When 9/11 happened, he wrote me a very long letter about a lot of things, but he said, as for 9/11, it's not a big deal because it was probably, those buildings were probably built with Jewish money. The worst thing about this is his previous wife was Jewish, and he had a daughter who was Jewish.
Wow.
And he could say something like that.
Oh, awful.
I never was able to forgive him for that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
found it terribly offensive.
That's awful. Yeah.
But that's how deep those feelings run.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. He's been long gone.
Well, thank you for offering your reflections on the text. One of the things that I think a lot about is and I'm sure we all think about, is the retraction in the size of our congregations. And we had this era in the United States of full pews and a church that was thriving. And all of our congregations, to some extent, have seen retractions. Some have seen growth, but most, I think, in mainline Protestant churches have seen retractions in the membership. And, I think for me, this gospel text really refocuses me on, it's not about being the best. It's not about being the biggest. It's not about outward signs of greatness, but it's about how we serve our siblings, what we do to serve our siblings, even through community partnerships that may or may not get people to come on Sunday, right? I mean, it's like the laundry ministry is a way that we're serving the neighborhood. And so I guess this has been on my mind, I guess maybe in the back of my mind this week, but this is sort of what comes up, that that our greatness will be found, our greatness as a church will be found in the ways that we serve and seek to serve like Christ serves us. Whether or not that translates to fuller pews or a bigger church, it's really out of our hands. But discipleship is about following the steps of Jesus, even if the community that follows is small. And at this time, it's small and would remain small for quite a while. And so I think it's a good reminder for us of, as some of you described, to sort of lean into the self-giving that we do as a community and as individuals. Because I think that's what makes us feel best about our walk in faith. And like giving your time or your treasure or your talent to the poor or to those in need without any expectation that something will come back to you. As a community, the more that we sort of lean into this giving and partnership with others in our world for the good of all, I think the better that we will feel we're walking alongside Jesus in his ministry, even if nothing comes back to us for our, temporal benefits. So that's what. But I thank you all for sharing your reflections. They were wonderful, and I'm glad we could take this time to share. And sometimes we do a little bit of this at evening prayer, an abbreviated sort of reflection on what we hear. So feel free to join us Monday evenings at 6:30 on Zoom and continue to share in these kinds of conversations. Thank you.